Hi guys, Curvy Girl Lee here and welcome to Curbside Trends. So today we're going to be making this Torrid inspired color blocked skirt. They in the store initially wanted I think about $70 for this skirt, and I just figured why would I pay $70 for something that I can make with $7 worth of fabric in my home. So I decided that I was going to pull out my sewing machine and show you all how I very easily and quickly make this skirt. Now, before we get started, if you are new here, welcome to my channel. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you will know when I upload new and awesome content. If you are not new here, welcome back, gorgeous or handsome. Now let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to do is determine the width of your skirt. Now, how you do this, you're going to take a measuring tape and wrap it around your waist like this. And then you're going to multiply that number by, at very least, I would say by 3. But between 4 and 5 is going to give you a fuller look. So you have to determine how full you want your skirt to be in order to determine how many times you're gonna multiply your fabric by that. I personally multiply mine by 4, but you can do more or less depending on what you want. The second thing you're going to want to do is determine where you want your skirt to stop. Now, if you see where my hand is right now, you're going to take your measuring tape and put the starting point there and then move it down to wherever you want it to stop. You will then add 4 inches to this measurement. Now these 4 inches are going to break down into 2 parts. When you fold it over 2 inches at the bottom, you will create a 2-inch hemline. When you fold it over 2 inches at the top, you will create a 2-inch banding casing. Now I used a 1.5-inch band, which is why I only needed a 2-inch banding casing, but you will add more or less depending on how wide your band is. At this point, you do have your measurement. So like I said, I chose to do 4 times my waist. You can do more or less depending on how full you want your skirt to be. So my waist was 57 inches, so I did 57 times 4 to get my total number of fabric. Now, because I am using a color blocking method, I will be using half of it will be the white and half will be the black. So 2 times my waist for the white and then 2 times my waist for the black. Once you sew those pieces together, you will have a total of 4 times my waist. In this second clip, you're going to see me taking off the excess fabric from the length of my fabric. Now, again, this is going to be something that you have to determine on your own depending upon your height. And then also, I have to take an account for my stomach and the way that my stomach will kind of take away some of my fabric as well. That is something solely on you that you will have to determine based on your own measurements. But if you have any questions about how to truly determine your measurements, I am more than willing to assist you with this. At this point, I'm going to be prepping to sew my 2 pieces of fabric together. Now, these particular pieces of fabric are kind of the same on both sides, so it really doesn't matter what side I choose to sew on and face them. However, if you do have patterns that are different, like be sure that you're sewing with the right side in, and also if you have to combine 2 different patterns, be sure that those 2, while you're sewing, the 2 right sides are touching each other. Otherwise, you're going to get one part of your fabric to be on the outside and then the other part of your fabric is going to be on the inside. It's just going to be a mess. So be sure that at all times, the right sides of your fabric is touching each other and you are sewing with the right side in. So when you flip it out, it'll be like a seamless seam. I do apologize for the shaking of the camera. It is connected to my table and I did not realize that I was bumping it so much. Now what I'm doing at this point is taking my threaded bobbin out. The last thread that I worked with was orange. So I'm just changing the bobbin on that and I'm starting with the black thread, and I will be using the black thread to combine my 2 fabrics. Now for me, threading my needle using the actual sewing machine is just a non-starter. Like, I'm not even gonna flex like I don't use a needle threader to thread my sewing machine, because I just cannot get that snap method that the sewing machine provides. If you're able to do that, then you are an absolute pro and I give you the highest praise. But I pull out my needle threader every time and thread my needle because I just cannot for the life of me figure that out. And honestly, it's okay because the needle threader works just fine. At this point, I am just pulling out my under thread, which was kind of giving me some trouble. It wasn't catching, the top thread wasn't catching the bottom thread for me to pull it through the sewing machine. If you know how to sew, then you know what that means. I don't know the correct terminology for it, but if you know how to sew, you know exactly what I mean when I say that my top thread was not catching my bottom thread for me to pull it out. So I had to get the tweezers and really work with it, but I eventually got it. So now you're going to start combining your two fabrics. Something I should have said in the beginning of the video, for this particular skirt, when you're combining your fabrics, you're going to combine them along the length of the fabric and not the width of the fabric. So basically along the sides of the fabric and not the top or bottom of the fabric, because at that point you're creating a pillowcase or something. So be sure that you're combining your fabric along the length of the fabric so it'll make one wide piece and not one long piece. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to say it again. Be sure to combine your fabric along the length of the fabric and not the width of the fabric. So basically the two sides is where you're combining, not the top or the bottom. Also, just a beginner's note, if you are a beginner, be sure to always do at least 3 back stitches first before you start your forward stitching, and then at the end of your garment, at the end of whatever your sew line is, you're going to do another 3 back stitches to lock your stitching in. I really just did not realize how badly this camera was shaking, but what you see me doing here, I have already sewn together one side of my garment. Now I have pinned it to sew the other 2 sides together. I decided to slow this down so you can see me do my 3 back stitches here, boom, and then now I will move forward. We are making really good progress. So now you have your 2 pieces of fabric combined. What you see me doing here is opening up that seam that I've created by sewing 2 pieces of fabric together. I'm opening it up and then pressing it down so everything will lay really nice and smooth. You can't see it on the first side that I did, but on the second side you can see it a lot better, so you'll understand what I mean. Alright, so but for a better explanation, you're going to open up those 2 pieces of fabric that you have from sewing the 2 pieces of fabric together, and you're just going to very smoothly press down those 2 pieces. You're going to press the black side against the black piece of fabric and then the white side against the white piece of fabric, and that will just give you a very smooth interior seam. We are back on a new day. I do believe from this point forward my camera is actually pretty steady. I do apologize again for all of that shaking. I didn't realize until after I began editing this video that, yeah, it was pretty terrible. And so now I know not to mount my camera to my table. Anyway, what I'm doing here is I'm folding my fabric about a couple centimeters just to give me a nice crisp guideline, and then I'm going to also fold it 2 inches. And for this particular skirt, I folded it 2 inches at both my band encasing and my hemline. So I have a 2-inch hemline, and then I also have a 2-inch band encasing because my band is about 1.5 inches wide. So in total, that little pocket that you will see that I'm creating is 2 inches wide. Also, in preparation for sewing down my hemline and my banding casing, I'm going to, as you saw, fold and press it out at the 2 inch mark, and then I'm going to pin it down. Now, a beginner mistake that I used to make all the time, in honestly kind of being lazy, if I'm being just real honest about it, I used to put my pins so far apart because it was just too much to take all of those pins out. But you need all of those pins in order to keep your garment with a nice, crisp, even line. So don't be shy on the pins, right? You need every last one of them. And it takes a lot to take all of those pins out every 5 seconds when you're sewing, but it's very necessary because it just kind of keeps everything intact as you are sewing. So you will see me going around the entire garment and making this, first the little 2 centimeter fold for a nice crisp line, and then the 2 inch fold that will create my hemline. And then if I do it at the top, that's creating my encasing. So you'll see me do that around the entire garment.
Turn me inside out, make my heart speak. Need no one else, you're all I need. Personality, everything you do, it's me love, everything about you. Your smile, your style.
For this project, you're going to need 2 colors of thread. For me specifically, I'm doing black and white color blocking, so I need black thread and then I also need white thread. At this point, I realized that I cannot find my white thread, so I had to take a trip to my local Joann's. And while I was there, I also picked up some other random stuff because I also lost my sewing tomato, which is my pin cushion. A few months ago, I redid my office space and I organized some things, and in the process, I lost like my sewing bobbins, my pin cushion, and possibly my white thread. So I went ahead and I replaced all of those things, and then we're gonna get back to work. I purchased a box of needle threaders because I found that over time they do become a little bit more flimsy. So I just purchased a whole bunch of them to assist me in threading my needle because, like I said, I cannot maneuver around the snap method that the sewing machine provides. So I just do mine the way I know how. Okay, I get it how I live at this point. So I'm putting my white thread in and start. I will be starting with the white side, sewing down the white side of my hemline and my encasing. Now that the white portion of that is complete, I am going to wrap up my white thread and also change out my white thread bobbin, put in my black thread, and then the black thread bobbin to get started on the black side of it. Something that I want to point out: when you are doing skirts like this that require an encasing for you to put your band in, you must leave an opening for you to be able to thread your band through. If you do not have that opening, then you will have nothing to put your band in. So instead of starting right at the seam of where my black and white connected, instead of starting right at the seam of where I stopped the white, I'm going to go down a little bit so I will have an opening in my garment. I know it appears that I am starting right at the connection with the black and white. However, it's important to note that the opening is actually at the bottom, at the finish line of this particular segment here. So it does seem as if I'm starting right where the black and white connected, and it seems like I'm closing that hole that I told you all to leave, but I'm not. It's actually at the bottom of it. Also, another beginner note, what you're going to see here shortly is me realizing that my bottom thread, which is on my bobbin, has actually run out. Now, the bottom thread on the bobbin is actually what locks your threading in. If you do not have that bottom thread, then you're going to lose all of your stitching. So I had to actually wind the bobbin, wind a new bobbin, and then change out the thread and all of that stuff to basically start my stitches back to locking. Now, if you know what you're doing, you don't have to start completely over. What you can do is to find out where your bobbin ran out at, and then just kind of do 3 back stitches and then forward stitches over that, and that will just kind of seal in the part that you had stitched before. I hope that makes sense. So here I'm realizing that that top segment has stitched. So I'm just starting right there where the bottom thread stops, and I do my 3 back stitches real quick, and then I get right back to work. If you do your lines straight, then it will blend right in. You won't have multiple lines showing that you had to kind of go over something. But if necessary, now if you need to just kind of take all of that out and start fresh, then you do that to make your garment look as you want it to, but you don't necessarily have to. Remember to always end your stitching with your 3 back stitches to lock that stitching in, and remember here you are leaving a gap to be able to insert your band. My waist was 59 inches. However, it's just not my recommendation to do 59 inches of elastic because it does stretch. And to be honest with you, the less elastic you have, the more gathered the skirt will look. It looks better for me. Now, if you want to do the complete measurement of your waist, that is completely up to you. But my recommendation would be to measure this based on as tight as you can get it while still being comfortable. So I don't have a true measurement here. You would put it up against your body and stretch it as far as it will go while still feeling comfortable for you. And again, me personally, I think that this makes the skirt look a lot better when your waistband isn't so big. It just kind of like gathers the skirt and makes it look a lot nicer. Remember that opening I told you to leave? Here's what we're going to do. Take a pin and stick it through one end of your elastic. And that end is going to be your feeder end. So you're going to start sticking your elastic through that opening that I told you to leave. And you're going to use that pin to kind of push it through. So you're just going to gather the material on the pin and then pull the fabric over the elastic, and you're going to continue to do this until you get the elastic all the way in to the end of that opening I told you to leave. And then you're going to pin the other end of your elastic to that opening. Okay, after that you will go back to feeding the elastic through, and the skirt is going to start to gather, and you will see your skirt actually forming. Right now you got a big long piece of fabric that looks like absolutely nothing, but once you continue to pull that elastic through, it will start to gather up and make a beautiful skirt. I thought I had given you all a better view of this, however I didn't, but I'm going to talk you through it because it's really simple. So once you have pulled your elastic through both ends of the skirt, you can see now that you have that ruching effect. You're going to take that elastic, line it up, and then overlap one piece on top of the other, and then pin it in place. So it should look like this. I will then stitch those 2 pieces together, being sure that I'm stitching through both pieces that I have overlapped. And I do this by running my sewing machine back and forth about at least 5 times, but sometimes I do more because I have experienced that my band has not completely sewn well together and it has come loose on me. So at least, at very minimum, I would say 5 times, but I typically go back and forth easily 8 or 9. So that's really at your discretion, but the more the better would be my opinion. Once you have sewn your band together, you will take that opening that you once had and sew it closed. So that will completely seal everything into place. So we are all done. I really enjoyed making this skirt. I think it came out absolutely cute. I even got a comment on one of my pictures and was like, my cousin was the designer of this skirt. I'm gonna send her your picture showing that, you know, you have this skirt on. I'm thinking like, no sis, I did not pay that much money for that skirt when I could make it myself. But anyway, I thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Leave me some questions if you have any questions about making this skirt yourself. I am more than willing to help you. As always, be kindness, love, and light. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.